2nd, 2022 to order at 7 p.m. If you join me in saluting the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Copeland,
Here.
Tom Baylor,
Here.
Kathy Sherman is absent. Jeff Guard,
Here.
Melina Meyer,
Here.
Ann Schaefer,
Here.
David Allison,
Here.
and David Gleason.
Here.
That's a quorum of council.
Approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second?
Have a motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to amend.
Councilman Gleason.
Yeah, I'd like to remove item number 19, the discussion of COVID-19 emergency response from the agenda permanently and future agendas.
I'll second that for discussion.
Have a motion and a second. Councilman Gleason, to your motion.
Yeah, I just don't think we need the two on there. We still have the COVID-19 update from Dr. Sanders. Even if that's not going to be in that section, we still can talk to her during her report on CCMC. So just don't think we need it in there anymore.
Councilman Baylor, to your second.
No comment.
Further discussion, council? Okay, all those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay. Aye.
Okay, I hear 4 in favor and 2 opposed, so the amendment passes. So to the main motion, is that Councilman Allison?
Yeah.
Okay, approval of the agenda as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the agenda is approved as amended. Does council have any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications to disclose? Okay, hearing none. Disclosures and communications by and petitions from visitors. Guest speakers from the incident management team for a COVID-19 update. We don't have anyone online.
I haven't heard from her today.
Okay. Audience comments regarding agenda items? Okay, and council, for those of you online, we have a member of the public, Wendy Rainey, and then Harbor Master Chanella and Public Works Director Sam Greenwood here in the audience with us. So chairpersons and representatives of boards and commissions, school board? Okay, hearing none. CCMC Authority Board? Okay, it doesn't look like reports tonight. And of course, we don't have a student council representative.
We have one.
So we have one.
I've been in touch with them.
Okay.
They're just, they're going through a lot over there.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, we don't have one tonight.
No,
With that.
no.
Council, we have 3 items on the consent calendar. Would you like to set any of those aside? Okay, roll call vote, please.
On the consent calendar, Melina Meyer,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Kathy Sherman is absent. David Gleason,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
The consent calendar is approved.
Okay, and that had included the approval of minutes, and we don't have any considerations of bids. So reports to officers, mayor's report. I don't have much to report at this time. Just been loosely following the progress in Juneau. Things are really just getting off to a start down there. So, city manager's report. Okay, Councilman Schaefer.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had an update from NVE at all recently, and then regarding the CCMC NVE situation, and then I was also wondering, at some point we had decided that we were going to try and meet, I think twice a year, with the NVE council, and we haven't done that in a while, so I didn't know if it would be worth reaching out to them and see if they, if they're interested in meeting. And
Okay.
we haven't followed up on that in a long time.
I did reach out to Director Adams and talk to him at length. They are still working on coordinated healthcare in between CCMC and NBE. They're not in a position yet to meet with council. He thinks maybe in a couple of months, but he was in town here last week, and I believe he was planning on meeting with the CCMC Authority Board, Dr. Sanders, and I believe City Manager, and just kind of map out. But again, they're pursuing a joint venture, and it's kind of a steeplechase. They're trying to work with CCMC towards coordinated healthcare and still navigate their opportunities on the federal side to make sure they keep their, maintain their position for IHS status and stuff. But the intention is to meet with council here probably in the next couple of months. Thank you. Any other questions of me? Okay, manager's report.
So I did put in the packet a written report. If there's any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. But on the NVE side, I did meet with Bert last week, and we touched briefly on the hospital. And as Clay said, there's limited movement at this point in time because they're still pursuing a number of funding opportunities. It's a long-term venture is the way it was described. I did talk about other possible partnerships. We've given them information to maybe help us with the South Harbor edition. He seems very interested in that. Housing is a high priority item on their list and certainly on ours as well. So we're going to work together collaboratively on that. And so I think we've opened a dialogue and we're going to meet monthly. So at least Bert and I will be sharing information and trying to figure out ways to collaborate. Raw fish tax, there were 4 challenges that have come in. I articulated that in my report. The IBEW labor contract will be presented to you at the 16th meeting, I hope. Financials also at that meeting. And we're actively pursuing projects. I want to turn my report time over now to Sam, who has an update on the harbor. I think there's a written report in front of you, but she can maybe go over that.
Okay, good, thanks. I'm actually just passing the buck to everybody else to report to you tonight. So Tony's going to give a little update on the PR that we're doing for the bond, the harbor bond. I can't believe I called it a bond. The loan, the clean water loan. And then Mark is also on the phone, so when Tony's done, he'll go through the update. We're working towards getting that update in a formal. Every time it'll look the same, and we're going to try to get it into the packet. We're just trying to get our ducks in a row right now. And, a lot can happen between packet day and the Wednesday meeting. So there might be even updates, even if we do get it in the packet. But we are working on it, and we'll do a budget. We're thinking once a month or maybe quarterly. We don't really know until things start rolling with the grants and things like that. So I'll let Tony talk, and then you can pass it to Mark.
So we've been working on getting a way to have a way to get the word out on Proposition 1 for the clean water loan. So Curtis did some interviews with myself and Sam for a video that we're going to get on Facebook this week, get that up and going on the video with some pictures and pictures from the harbor. On February 5th during Ice Worm, 2 to 6 here in the building, I'll have a booth for question and answers on Proposition 1 on the South Harbor project, what we're doing, if anyone's got any questions on what plans we're planning, sections of it we're going to do, the priorities, or just on how we're going to pay for this, I'll be there for that. So, and then getting more flyers out. Tomorrow we'll have flyers up, hanging around in here, down at the harbor, post office, the stores. So just to let everyone know what we're doing. Okay. All right, you're on, Mark.
Okay, thank you, Tony. This is the disembodied voice again. It was a little awkward last time, and it's a little less awkward this time. So, as I go through kind of the highlights of the progress report, I'd like to invite you to ask questions and do that sort of thing. As Sam said, that this is sort of a prototype of what we think should be a monthly progress report. Wants to capture the work that Sam is doing, that Curtis is doing, that Tony's working on, and some of the things that I'm tackling as well. And like I say, we'll try to get these out once a month. Probably be able to put some additional information in the report on budget cost versus plan, that sort of thing, as we get rolling through procurement, fabrication, construction, and that sort of thing. And so there'll be more detail at the back end of a report like this moving forward. But I thought I'd just sort of touch bases on some of the things I thought were really kind of highlights in this report. I think the biggest highlight is there are adequate funds to rebuild South Harbor. What we're unsure of a little bit about right now is sort of the timing of when we're going to get our hands on those funds and be able to get our design builder or contractor moving forward. We do have a meeting scheduled with the RAISE folk, kind of a kickoff meeting on February the 10th. That should give us a lot of guidance and kind of provide us with some understanding. We've been in contact with the RAISE people on the environmental side of things and are beginning to develop an understanding of what it is they're going to require and kind of where we're going to go. I think Sam and Tony had mentioned to you that the priorities are going to be to replace all the floats and install a drive-down ramp. Given the funds that we think are available and the complications with some of the other potential funds, we're going to have to defer building a bulkhead until a second phase of the project. And I don't know when that is, and I don't know where those funds are going to come from. But we talked about that a little bit today in our call, and we have some thoughts about what might be available coming out of the Infrastructure Act money that the state's going to get. I think we need to put our oar in the water and see what funds might be available to us, and so we can do that. The other thing we've talked about is getting this project done between the two fishing seasons, and the only way I can see that getting done is to use a design build project delivery approach. And from what I understand, that's something that's on your agenda this evening to discuss that, and I hope that will be an affirmative decision on your part, because otherwise I don't see us getting this thing done next fishing season. And I just want to touch on schedule a little bit. I anticipate that the replacement pile that we'll be putting in, I think there are like 214 potentially, will probably be shipped on the deck of the construction barge when it comes up, depending on who we wind up with as a builder. And then the floats and such things will come up on material barges as they're being produced. So I think that's the sequence. My guess is we will come in and demo the harbor from the fairway going out toward the breakwater, and then we will build it back from the breakwater out to the fairway. I think that's the logical sequence that we would use, but clearly we need to, let our builder give us some guidance on how they think they can do it. I'm not the only thought on this, and there are a lot of smart people who will be connecting through. Looking at the cost, we think right now, without the bulkhead, we're looking at we're in the neighborhood of about 33 million, 34 million to get this done. But that will be determined really on the price proposals we get from our builders. And I won't really know a definitive number until we get proposals, get RFPs out and get proposals back in, and we'll take a look at where we're going to go. I did try to highlight, I think, some of the issues that, might impact us. And those issues are, geotechnical conditions, which we're going to be exploring here in the near-term future. Supply chain delays. I don't know what those will be, but they're out there. The impact of inflation on materials and labor costs, can be a barrier, and then potentially permitting delays on both the environmental and the core permits. Some combination of those could reach out and bite us, and I don't know, but I just wanted to draw your attention to them and sort of see where that's gonna go. And talking this through with the city staff and with some other folks that I have been in contact with, I think probably the biggest risks right now that we're looking at are the timing of availability of funds and the permitting and when we will get permits. And those are things that we're really focusing on right now, trying to get our hands wrapped around them. So we did put out a request for proposal and evaluated 2 proposals, one from P&D and one from RM Consult. After doing the evaluation, we decided that RM Consult would be people that we would select. We're in the process of trying to get a contract negotiated with RM. John Daly, who some of you may know, who has done work in Cordova, is in South America this week fishing, but he's due back this weekend, and we'll get a hold of him. But I spoke with Len Story, who's the CEO of R&M, asking him to kind of get rolling on the scope of work and the cost for the geotech side of things and the grant administration, and had a conversation today with people on the grant administration side, kind of getting them kicked off. So we're making progress, even though we don't have a contract in place. We're getting those tasks done and moving forward. And we'll get pricing and work tasks from them and be able to put those in front of you for your consideration as we move ahead. Our environmental and permitting specialist, Robin Wright, has been in contact with MARAD environmental team, and we're getting some guidance from them. And I think that we've got a plan going forward. It looks like we're going to have to do an environmental assessment. We won't be able to do a finding of no significant impact, just given the rules and the fact that we need an incidental harassment agreement to make that happen. And I am working right now with the city team to put an RFP together, a request for proposal for a design build team. Hopefully we will have that drafted, reviewed, and ready to publish by the end of this month. At least that's what I'm shooting for at this point in time. That's sort of work that will happen in February. We'll also get a letter permit request submitted to the Corps so that we can conduct the geotech work as soon as we get that mobilized through R&M, and we'll conduct that geotechnical investigation. We'll have a geotech report coming back that will be included added to the RFP and be able to move there. We know we're going to need an incidental harassment agreement because of Stellar sea lions and the otters. We're working on that. And we will be able to document the grant fund requirements, so we know of the 3 loans and grants that we have, what we have to report on a even basis. And we will continue to work on the cash flow side of things so we can match up the timing of grant funds and funds available for the project with the needs of the project as we move forward. The last few pages of in your packet there are just some examples of kinds of things that we should be reporting on moving forward, and just kind of listing them for your consideration there, so you'll know what we're going to be looking at as we move forward. You know, we don't have any design work going on. The schedule will be updated. It's second level of a work breakdown structure now. When we put out the RFP and get proposals back, we will request that to be a 5th level of work breakdown structure, so we'll have a lot more granular detail for that. We'll track the procurement status, we'll track fabrication, we'll look at the quality of the work that's being fabricated, we'll do inspections, we'll get quality reports back from fabricators as we move through this for the steel, for the floats, for pile and that sort of thing. And we will also then be looking at the construction that will be going ahead. And one of the things that we will want to document, I think, in a monthly status report is an analysis of quality control, quality assurance going forward. And I always think it's valuable in a progress report to identify any open issues that we're working on, things that we may not have solutions to, but advise council of the things that we're trying to tackle. In the future, we'll have more detailed information. We'll have detailed information on budgets, costs, and that sort of thing, both for the design build team going forward, as well as project management costs, the geotech side of things, the grant administration stuff, and those will all be reported back to you, as Sam said, on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, depending on what it is you'd like to see. And with that, I'd be open to any questions you might have, and be willing to try to answer them.
Questions, council?
Just more of a comment. I don't think I've ever seen a Stellar sea lion in the harbor. Lots of sea otters, but I'm surprised that came up as something you're going to have to haze.
Well, we don't want to call it hazing. What we need to do is when they get within a certain radius of the construction site, depending on what activity we're doing, if we're driving pile predominantly, we'll have to shut down while the otters are near the construction barge. And that's one of the things National Marine Fisheries Service is going to need to tell us is, what's the shutdown radius is going to be. And then there will be a certain number of what we call takes that will be allowed. That'll be incidents where we had to shut down because we had mammals in a restricted zone. So hopefully we don't take any, but we will be allowed to have some in the area where we're doing the construction.
Other questions, council?
Yeah, Councilman Baylor.
Councilman Baylor, you're coming through a little quiet.
Is this any better?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay, this is a comment. It kind of shows the wisdom of past councils of keeping land into the city hands and the use of the harbor commission and harbor. There's no doubt they will be using those lands for construction staging, and that there's been times where there's been pressure to sell some of that, and once again, this shows why we need to hang on to some of those properties.
Hey, Councilman Schaefer.
Yeah, I guess I have a question. It's probably more for the manager or Tony or Sam, but in addition to the outreach, I appreciated the description of the types of outreach you're going to do for the clean water loan, but besides the loan, what type, or do you, I mean, I'm sure you do, what type of outreach and education do you have planned to the community just on the harbor rebuild in general? I feel like we're going to need to start that, just education, outreach, heads up, engagement with the community probably sooner rather than later.
Gosh, everything sooner rather than
I
later
know.
at this point in our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're formulating plans as we're moving along, and that is one of our plans, including boats getting out of the harbor for a winter, how we're going to do that, how that's going to work, how we're going to let people know about that. So that is, now that we have a meeting with Ray's, we're getting a better understanding of the environmental, we're kind of move through the part of like, we're starting to think about those longer term things. So I actually just added that to our agenda today for our next call. So we'll be working on that definitely for the project and how we're going to communicate with the Harbor Commission and all those good things. So.
I think probably most critical is I think none of us really anticipated that we could move this quickly.
Yeah.
And so, as Sam says, we're scrambling a bit, but we have in our minds know exactly what we need to do to get, well, maybe not exactly, but we're very clear that we need to start communication quickly. It will be disruptive not only to sea mammals, but to mammals on land like us who will be listening to piles being driven for an extended period of time, boats that have to be moved. So our efforts are going to be to minimize those disruptions and to communicate clearly how long those disruptions will last and really stick to those schedules.
Other questions, comments, council? Okay, thank you, Mark. Appreciate the update and the overview.
Well, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
More on the city manager's report, Helen?
No, I think that's it for me at this moment in time. I do want to bring attention to the UBS report that is in one of the written reports. Again, we'll have a more thorough financial report at the meeting on the 16th, but everything else is in the packet. If you have any questions, by all means, give me a call.
Okay. Any questions for the manager?
Councilman Baylor?
Yeah, Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I've got a comment on the letters in regard to the fish tax. And specifically, I'm not going to talk about the legal ramifications. I'm not qualified for that, but I do appreciate the sentence here, and I'll read it. A nexus between your sales and Cordova exists when you fish. You sell to a buyer is conveyed at Cordova docks. Thus, you benefit from the service and infrastructure provided by Cordova. I want to emphasize the infrastructure provided by Cordova, because without that, they don't have the resources to sell their fish. This needs to be a partnership, as we all know, but I don't think you can underestimate the infrastructure provided by Cordova, and a lot of that is provided by the taxpayers of Cordova. So I appreciate the manager having that in there, and I think that's an important point. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Councilman Schaefer, if you can get close to your mic there.
I appreciated that you included the letters as well. And in addition, is there a plan for outreach with the processors for like some sort of education?
It's begun.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Other questions for the manager, council?
Yes, I would.
Councilman Gleason?
One of the things is definitely going to be the core fleet boats that have to be in the harbor all winter. Just have to work with serves on that, because we're required, you know, to be in the water, so find us a spot.
Okay. Other questions, council? Okay, clerk's report.
Sure, Helen also asked me to include under her report this, the Fisheries disaster declaration that NOAA did. If you recall, when the 2016 pink salmon one happened, the city got a piece. So that's in there to make it public for people and all the fishermen in our community to obviously pay attention to this. But also, you know, it'll be a while, but we'll hear about hopefully a part of it for the city. I think we're doing something soon with our last one. Anyway, otherwise, in my office, we've been dealing with the election. I'm sure everyone realizes the declaration of candidacy closed. So, and I guess I'll tell you guys who's running. Wendy Rainey and David Allison for mayor. Tom Baylor is unopposed for seat A. Kristen Carpenter is unopposed, seat F. Molly Mulvaney and Ken Jones for seat G. 2 school board seats are available, and we have 5 running. Terry Stavig, Chris Bolin, Stephanie Rosinski-Bernard, Barb Jewell, and Tammy Altermott. 2 CCMC Authority Board seats, and we have 1 person running, Annie Linville. So I'm preparing the ballots currently, and I think by next week on Monday or Tuesday, or well, Monday, I'll probably mail out the first batch of absentee by mail. I think I have about 10 or 12 that I've gotten requests so far. Anybody who's listening can go on the main city webpage at the very bottom, elections information. And there are forms there that if you want to get a ballot mailed to you. But absentee or early voting, in-person voting starts February 8th. It's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 until the day before the election. And that information is also on the city website. And anybody can call me, email me, or call the front desk here, and we'll get any election questions answered. That's about it.
Okay, and if anybody wants to run for any of those seats or for that open CCMC Authority Board seat, they can still run on a write-in.
Yes. Write-ins would still have to declare with me before 5 p.m. on February 28th to be, so that any votes that are written in with your name won't count unless you declare with me. And if anybody's interested in doing that, I would do it sooner rather than later. So that any of the absentee or early voters are able to hear about it from you.
Any questions, council? Councilman Allison.
Yeah, just a question on that form for requesting. Can that be emailed to you, or
Yes.
you don't need
Yes.
the original?
Right.
email.
It can be emailed back to me. I do need a signature.
Okay.
So, but I've been pretty flexible, and people can print them, sign them, take a picture and send it back to me if they don't have a scanner or whatever.
Other questions, council? Okay, thank you. We have the staff quarterly reports included in the packet. Any questions or comments, council? Okay, and we have correspondence as noted in the packet. Any questions or comments, council? I just wanted to emphasize that letter from Department of Community and Economic Development, population at 2545, it's a 7% increase over the last 2 years. So no wonder that there's so much pressure on our housing. Okay, we don't have any ordinances and resolutions on the agenda tonight and no unfinished business. So under new and miscellaneous business, we have council approval of innovative procurement process, design build for the Crater Lake Siphon Project, page 39.
I move to approve.
Page 40, recommended motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I move to authorize the city manager to use the design build as the procurement method for the Crater Lake Siphon Project. Sorry.
You second that, Councilman Baylor?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to speak to your motion, Councilman Schaefer?
No, the project's fully funded, and it seems, we got that presentation about this type of procurement process at the last meeting, and it seems to make a lot of sense, so I'm in support.
Councilman Baylor, to your second.
I support it. That's part of that infrastructure of Cordova that helps out the fishermen.
Further discussion, council? Okay, roll call vote.
Tom Baylor,
Yes.
David Gleason,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer,
Yes?
David Allison,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
and Kathy Sherman is absent. Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, the next item is council approval of innovative procurement process, design build for South Harbor rebuild project.
Move to authorize the city manager to use an innovative procurement process design build. Did I say the right one?
It's on page 42.
Oh. I move to authorize the city manager to use the design build as the procurement method for the South Harbor rebuild project.
Second.
Would you like to speak to your motion, Councilman Gleason?
See, it's the cheaper way to do it with less headaches in the long run. So I'm in support of it.
To your second, Councilman Schaefer?
I'm in support.
Further discussion, council? Okay, roll call vote.
David Gleason,
Yes.
Jeff Guard,
Yes.
Melina Meyer,
Yes.
Kathy is absent. Tom Baylor,
Yes.
David Allison,
Yes.
Ann Schaefer.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, next item is council direction to staff after sales tax discussion.
I'll start us out, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Ellison?
Yeah, just to get the discussion going here, I think my concern is not necessarily with the code, but with the implementation of the code. And in particular, my concerns are people with an exemption, using that exemption for everything and not just their business. But more of what we've talked about recently is the $3,000 cap that we have, and I understand that a few years ago we had a what was it called, a referendum, or was it a
Initiative petition.
an initiative petition to repeal what the council has decided. I think at that time we had decided that 7,500, but I guess I'm okay with a $3,000 cap if it's applied as it should be. And as the code reads, and I was trying to find that exact page here, but as I read it anyway, the code says that any single transaction, and you can't use multiple things put on one invoice. For example, if I rent an apartment for 1 month, I pay, obviously if I'm paying $1,000 a month, I pay 6% on there. Was it 6%? It's not 12% on a rented apartment, right? Anyway, whatever the tax rate is for that, I pay that on that, but I can't. What I think is happening in some cases is they're getting 6 months worth of invoices and only paying tax on half of that, on 3,000 of that 6,000. And I don't think that's certainly not the intent of the law here, but we've been told specifically from at least one business owner that is what's going on. That some people are, if you rent a warehouse, the people that are renting it charge $1,000 a month, but then they give you an invoice for a year, and you're only paying on 3,000 of that instead of 12,000 of that. And I don't know that the code needs to change to do that, but certainly our enforcement of that needs to tighten up. I think we need to find a way to disallow that. Whether that's raising the cap to something better, but then I can see, for discussion, that there could be some exemptions, building homes, which is in here. If you raise it like that, do you charge that on a $35,000 engine that somebody has to buy? Changing the cap, but anyway, I guess, do you understand what I'm saying there with we can't let multiple things add up and make one invoice out of it and then say the cap was reached. That's not the intent of the law, but I believe that's what the code says currently, is that you can't do that. Now, I'll find it here.
Yeah, it's
50, section C.
It's C. And in D, it says if it's construction materials and services, those can be aggregated over a 12-month period.
If you got a building permit.
That's for construction materials.
That's construction materials and services. But for that one, you can add. I guess I have a question.
Councilman Schaefer.
Are you saying at what point in the process is that happening, Councilman Allison? Is it like the invoice? Like I'm just the processes.
I think the retailer or whoever is selling the product, the reluctant, if they rent a room, and I don't know that the reluctant is doing this, I just know that there was somebody that sat here at the council table and told us that they were renting a warehouse or facility, and they were putting it on 6-month invoices, so they would only have to pay on $3,000 tax and not on the $30,000 or whatever that was. But they were being charged monthly.
Yeah.
But it was being put on a 6-month or 12-month invoice. So it's I'm sure it's the person buying it say, I don't want to pay sales tax and all that. Can you put it all on one invoice? I'm sure that goes on. Mm-hmm. But it's ultimately the seller's responsibility to collect that sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
Mind if I interject something, Council? So like on your electric bills, even though that's billed just monthly, there's no $3,000 tax cap on your monthly electric bill because it accumulates through the whole month. So someone has a $100,000 electric bill, they have to pay the full $6,000 of sales tax on it, even though they're only getting the bill once a month because it accumulates like that. So that's kind of the way it works. So where it really bites you is when you have like a construction crews come to town and work on a job for a year and a half or 2 years, and they're not paying sales tax for their lodging that whole time, so.
Okay.
And it's 12% when you're talking about a hotel room or an apartment, or not an apartment, but I guess the 12% is just on nightly rates. Okay, yeah.
Further discussion, council? Councilman Schaefer?
Mayor,
Councilman Baylor, then Schaefer?
I guess I've got a question of why. Why do we have some of these? Why do we have tax cap on hotel accommodations? The only discussion or people that kind of got upset when we raised the cap was our building sales and our commercial boat sales. And I can understand those two businesses because if we hit the commercial boat sales, that would really harm that business. In regards to the building business, I'm not sure why they go out 12 months. Normally, you purchase a building package, and then from that forward on, getting small items as you go, or maybe another package for finish. But I think all of these things need to be looked at. Why do we discount the sale of property from real estate agents? I'm not sure why that's in there. If we're running a bed and breakfast, do we get to discount our food? I don't know if we do, but if we do, why? We're running a business. Why do we give tax credit for child care? If you're running a state licensed child care business, you are making money. It's a business. Go pay the tax. I think that's what I'm looking at. This is why are some of these in here? They were put in here for a reason. I know the council, we've never really sat down and asked that question. And I think we need to go over some of these.
Councilman Schaefer?
My comment was kind of going back to what Councilman Allison was saying with the tax cap. And it's not that isn't necessarily a code issue, but more an implementation. And so then from the city, I guess I'm wondering, like, how do we enforce that or change that? Or, what power that we have as a city to deal with that if it's happening?
Helen?
And I think that's the sticky wicket issue, is that we do not have staff that can enforce the code. We rely on individual businesses to comply with the tax and submit a tax return, if you will, to us saying, this is why I'm paying this is my receipts, this is what we've done. And so it's the honor system. And I don't think we would need to really adjust our practice in order to enforce that. And probably have staff that would do that, dedicated to that, because that's a big project.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Baylor?
Can anybody answer the question why you would have the ability to rent accommodations and get a tax cap on it? Why? Why is it there?
Susan?
I don't think it is there. I think people are using the cap, or businesses or owners who know about the cap for things like engines and using it to their advantage for things like rents. Because if you look at exemptions, like sales tax is always talked about as sales, it's levied on sale prices, charges for services, and rents collected. But then when you look at the beginning of exemptions, it talks about how these sales and services are exempt, but not rents. So nothing that is a rent should be considered one of the exemptions.
Councilman Schaefer?
Yeah, I guess this is for real property, but double A, the exemption is that sales of real property are exempt, but rentals of real property are not. But that's specific to the real property, right?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Guard?
Yeah, what happens if we just look at exempting goods and not services, or rentals, however we want to call it? But as was stated before, our biggest opposition when we tried to go to the $7.5 or $7,500 tax cap was being able to compete on goods that are brought in to sell for boat engines, building materials, that kind of stuff. So what happens if we look at just making it goods and not services or rentals?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So the tax cap is on goods and on single transaction goods, and council tried to raise that tax cap and a referendum reversed it, but rents are not exempt. They should not get a tax cap as the code's written. But if they're submitting that they have X amount of tax, then, I mean, anyway. Councilman Allison?
Maybe we can, yeah, I think the code is okay. I think the code doesn't allow for adding 6 months of rent together and using the cap for that. But maybe we can find a place in here somewhere specifically to state does not include rental of properties or whatever the wording needs to be, rooms and property or whatever. I understand what Councilmember Guard is saying with saying just that the exemptions are only for goods, not for services and rentals, but I'm okay with that as well if we want to. But I don't think maybe the cap should only be on goods and not on services and rentals. But I think somehow with this, we can specify in here, maybe add some wording that specifies the concerns that we have and addresses those. Since we don't have a code enforcement officer, but quite frankly, the manager said it would need more staff to do that. But if we're losing 10% of 3.6 million, that's $360,000 to pay for somebody to do some research. And I don't think 10% is far-fetched. I've been in line at a grocery store many, many times and have seen people that use their tender account for resale, and I know darn well that it isn't going to the tender for resale. But yet they're getting a tax exemption on that because that's what they're saying it is. So anyway, we need to tighten that up somehow, and I'm not against an enforcement officer if we think that can get us. But I think we can tighten it up some with the code by being a little more specific about the non-exemptions.
So, council, I'm pretty much hearing convergence in the whole discussion around the exemptions and tightening those up. Is that the kind of the consensus?
This is Councilmember Meyer.
Councilman Meyer?
I guess one of the questions that I have is, when you fill out your sales tax, I believe that there's a spot where you're supposed to file the exceptions that type sales that you did, and I think maybe doing some education to the business sector about that so that we can have some data, because I'm kind of curious about what transactions are actually getting the sales tax cap. I can speak to it a little bit on short-term rental side, just from my experience, they're reluctant, but usually the sales cap doesn't really have too much of an effect on it unless you start doing monthly rentals, which is long-term. Anything that is just normal rental is at 12%. But then if there is someone that wants to do a long-term rental for a couple months, that's when the sales cap and the, room accommodation one does kind of come into play because it's long-term rentals, which is 30 days. So I do think the 3,000 should be raised a little bit, because if you're renting out, say, an apartment for $4,000, $5,000 a month, I'm kind of just making up numbers here, but then it's sales tax so that you're actually only taxing the 3,000, and I don't think that would be a case usually for other types of long-term rentals going on. Kind of a long-term, short-term rental space there. So I think the 3,000 cap should be raised again, but I'm kind of curious about what anything goes in there, because if it's over that and we're talking about real property, then that's already exempt. And if you're talking, we probably do exempt for boat sales or something in there too, but what kind of sales would we capture if we just got rid of the sales cap, and the exemptions in there are the exemptions that are in there? But I'm just curious what kind of sales are these sales caps, and are they being reported, or if that's where we need to focus to have businesses report these when they do a sales cap transaction.
Susan?
I'll tell you one that I'm not sure should be a legitimate one or not is a fuel fill up for a boat. Should that be capped at 3? Or if it's over, should that pay the full amount? Is it a cumulative number of gallons, or is it one sale?
A one-time purchase?
It's one-time purchase?
I don't know.
Okay, well, we lose a lot on that, I'll tell you. Or not lose a lot, but that's an expensive exemption.
Yeah.
Councilman Ellison?
Yeah,
Councilman Baylor?
yeah, I think if they're, I don't know what currently fuel is doing. Currently, if you buy $20,000 worth of fuel, you pay on $20,000 of tax?
No, you don't.
You don't, you pay $3,000. I guess I don't agree with that exemption either, because if I'm buying fuel by the gallon, I'm buying it it's no different than buying my electric by the kilowatt. I'm buying by the gallon just because I buy 100,000 gallons. Shouldn't be exempt, but I guess I'm leaning towards Councilmember Gart's idea of getting rid of all the exemptions here, except maybe the government ones that are required by law to have in there, and just saying that goods are taxed, and decide what cap we want on the goods, and maybe 3,000 isn't an option for that. Maybe it needs to be higher than that, but for services and what's the other part of that? Services and rentals. There is no cap, and there are no exemptions other than the government ones that you have to have in there for state and federal governments. So that's what I'm leaning towards at this point in time. I agree with Councilmember Baylor that some of the exemptions, why is childcare any different than you running a restaurant? It's a service that they're providing, and it should be taxed. I understand, and I don't know why it was that way in the first place. I suppose it was an incentive for childcare businesses or the like. But anyway, I'd rather find other ways to support childcare for the needy in our community than to just tax exempt everybody. So anyway, that's what I'm leaning towards. Tax goods with a cap of something higher than $3,000 and no cap and no exemptions on the services and rentals.
Councilman Baylor, then Meyer.
Well, Councilman Myers spoke to it. One of my concerns, why would a construction company be able to come in here knowing that they're going to be here for 6 or 7 months and contract for those rooms and only pay up to the $3,000 cap? That makes no sense at all. Why do we have that in there? We need to get that out of there, especially with their upcoming construction season.
Councilman Meyer.
Yeah, I really think the sales cap should just go away. I think it kind of gets a little confusing. I think with filling up with fuel is a great example. And a lot of those big purchases are usually for businesses, or, you know, they're a cost of doing business, which is, you know, normally a tax write-off anyways, because it's one that they do. And again, with the rentals, you know, I think it all depends on how you do it. I mean, if you're doing, you know, $3,000 a month for 6 months, then you're not actually losing any sales tax. The cap is, and it's a monthly rental. I guess that would be different if you're renting a room for 6 months or an apartment for 6 months or something, and you kind of have it arranged that way. That does, I think, get a little confusing on the sales cap, and when is it a one-time purchase and when is it accumulating? You know, because if they rent it for 6 months, they only pay it for 3 months. I don't know. I've never really dealt with that exact scenario. I think it depends on what the amount is. But I think a lot of these large purchases are tax write-offs for businesses. So I really don't think that we should have a sales cap at all. And then, you know, maybe we'll hear about some of these things, but I just don't know where they're coming in, what all this sales tax things is. If it is just rentals, I don't know that it's all that much that we're losing in the city. But I see where we could be losing a lot is fuel. You know, pulling up with $10,000, $20,000 worth of fuel. I see that being a large ticket item that we're losing a lot out of the city. So I'm in favor of doing away with the sales cap.
Helen?
I'm hearing that it might be helpful to have an understanding of the exemptions and how businesses are using them. Would that be something that you might want information about before you make a recommendation or decision?
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Allison?
I think that'd be okay, but I think we're going to get a presentation on what staff or whoever is the presenter thinks it should be. I think that currently, you know, the way the Reluctant does it and the way Orca does it and the way the Prince William does it could all be different. We just don't know because we don't obviously have an audit on any of those. You know, the way Ocean Beauty did, just like the fish ticket thing, you know, Ocean Beauty might do it different than Trident does, which might do it different than somebody else does it. So I think I understand the exemptions and I understand how they're supposed to work, but I don't believe that they are working the way they should. And so anyway, I'm in favor of changing it. Presentation or no presentation. And I would consider getting rid of the cap. I would consider just taxing goods and not services and rentals. And let me clarify that. Again, I said get rid of all the exemptions. I would still have resale exemptions, you know, with a resale card that they've applied for through the city. Because there is, you know, we do I would encourage businesses within the town to, if you can buy your supplies or your goods, you know, from another vendor in town, it's that keeps the money in town and keeps it out of somebody else's pocket if it's at all possible to do. But we're going to get the argument that it's going to drive business out of town, and people are going to, if you got a, big purchase item, and that is true in some cases. If you get up to $10,000 and it's going to be $600 in sales tax, then yeah, I can pay for a ferry ticket with that and pick it up in Anchorage with my truck and not pay taxes currently. But those things are going to change as well, and so anyway, I'm in favor of making the changes or continuing discussion, but I think I already understand how it's supposed to work.
A little historical feedback, Council. From 2002, 2004 on Council, our revenues are really low. Property values are much lower. We didn't have any raw fish tax coming in. The population had dropped to 2,100. And I've never seen fuller council meetings than when we talked about eliminating exemptions. Every single one of them. We had the churches come in. We had the businesses looking at resale come in. We had the different providers that are all listed here. And then the same with the tax cap. As soon as we started talking about the tax cap on single purchases, the boat engine shops trying to sell boat engines, the large sales of homes and properties, sales of the single purchase sales of boats and large items, packed the room and ultimately got overturned by a referendum. So that's just what's out there. It's not much pushback right now, but I think what I'm hearing from a lot of council is just this item C here. And I can just say from managing a business in this town and having large construction projects that I've not seen that consistently applied to construction firms and not that are getting, they're being allowed that tax cap when it doesn't really apply, and actually talk to the city about it. So anyway, it sounds like that's something that collectively the council would like to hear. Why specifically on rents are there exemptions being allowed? Councilman Schaefer?
Well, I'm wondering, because yeah, it does seem like the code is doing what we want it to do, or some people. But the implementation or the enforcement is a problem. I wonder if this would be a good opportunity to collaborate with the chamber, like if the chamber could provide education to the business. I don't know, just like some sort of way that doesn't put more burden on the city staff, but work with our collaborators to help educate or outreach with the businesses in town. I'm not sure how much the chamber gets, works with that sort of thing, but.
Councilman Gleason?
I guess I would just say that I wouldn't be in favor of just getting rid of the cap because most things that fishermen have start at about 10 grand and go up, like, a new diesel engine's $35,000 to $50,000. So if you got rid of that cap, that engine would be pretty darn expensive to a guy that needs to buy it. So I would be cautious about doing that, I'm sure there would be another referendum to overturn that decision. I think we could raise it a little bit, but I wouldn't get rid of it.
Councilman Schaefer?
I thought Councilman Guard's idea was interesting, but just the exemption for goods but not services. Because then that would solve that, you need a new engine problem, good. But it would still encompass the, when the construction workers come to town.
I think that is in place, though. It says fees for sales or services in excess of $3,000 per single purchase transaction.
For sales and services. So this is saying for goods, but not, I thought Councilman Guard had suggested for goods, but not services. Because right now services are exempt.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I thought that was what his suggestion had been.
Susan?
I think something like services is another question. How are they accumulative and how are they not? It's the guy putting the engine in, or the guy coming and doing a whole new furnace at your house. If it's over 3 days' time and it costs $6,000, does it get capped? If it's a 1 day project, does it get capped? But it was $5,000 worth of labor. Those are services too. So those are the hard ones too. And I don't know how it's on the rents. It's hard to, when the tax return comes in, they've left off this much for an exemption. And they don't itemize it always. They're supposed to. They don't always itemize it. And then that takes an audit, I guess, to determine what they're exempting and what they're not. Anyway.
Councilman Allison?
Yeah, I guess my understanding of the taxes is if, somebody's working on my boiler and they're billing me by the hour, if it takes them 3 days or 3 months, they're billing me by the hour, and that's how the tax should be applied, by the hour. Not on the whole bill, but I'm sure it's being done the other way. Now, if they come in and bid a job and say, I'm gonna, replace the engine for you for $50,000, that's gonna include the engine and all the labor included and all the wiring and everything else, then I would say that would, the cap would apply there. But if he's gonna charge you, $100 an hour for the labor and $30,000 for the engine, then I don't think that labor part should be part of the cap. But anyway, that's my take of it. And unless we're going to consider an enforcement officer, it isn't going to change much.
Helen?
I think what I'm hearing and I'm observing probably is that there's a communication issue. There's misunderstandings, different interpretations of the code. Maybe what we can do is try to identify the problems and bring back to you interpretation issues and ask for your clarification, and then we can communicate that as a first step. Because what you just said, I know, is not how most people are applying the tax. And even I am not really clear on how we're applying the tax. So I think it would be really helpful to really think about a communication strategy, but first understanding the issues and then get clarity from you guys on interpretation so that we are all on the same page. And that is something we could do very easily.
You think you've heard enough to work with?
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Allison?
And I think working with the chamber once we have all of that ironed out is a good thing. I can tell you how people interpret the code is however it can make the cheapest tax. Any vendor and any person buying it is going to be willing to talk about that. And let's make an invoice for $5,000 and cap it at 3. So getting that out there and then having some kind of a discussion from the chamber, this is what we're expecting, then we start with that. I think it's, in the future, it might be a good idea to consider a code enforcement officer, whatever you want to call them. $3.6 million, and that's just on that is, it doesn't take very many percent to add up to a lot of money when we're talking about that. And a code enforcement officer could also look at other types of things besides that, building permits. Are people getting building permits? Not as much as this building is going on, I can tell you that. But anyway, there's things to consider.
Might just call it a finance manager. One other little anecdote is that Councilman Baylor.
Baylor?
Councilman Baylor.
Yeah, I think anything we do needs to be coordinated with the leadership at Shoreside Petroleum, Cordova Outboard, Peterson Welding. We need to talk to those people and see how that affects their business and the guide solutions. And there may be other businesses, but I can tell you, get a building permit, get a tax exempt card. You can go to every store in Cordova and not pay tax. That's just the way it is. It can be abused so easy, and it is abused. So we need to look at it.
That's just what I was going to mention, Councilman Baylor. I never saw the audit, but I'd heard on council back in 2002 that the city had an audit performed, and they said it was a pretty leaky sieve. In fact, they said you could probably lower the overall sales tax to 5% if you could stop the leakage. But so, okay, well, good discussion, council. I think the manager's got enough to work with.
One more.
Yeah, Councilman Gard.
Yes. We're all sitting here talking on conjecture where we think the holes in our tax exemptions are. And this is an important enough issue to the community, as we've seen with the referendum last time we tried to raise it, that I think it would be a good idea for us to have a workshop and have staff put together a list of what exemptions are costing us what. I mean, if, you know, the tax for rentals for hotel rooms or whatever's come up a number of times, and if that's not costing us anything meaningful, then that's not a place to spend all our time spinning our wheels on here. If we could get an idea of what our tax exemptions are costing us where, and then sit down and take a look at it and find out where those dollars that we're spending on exemptions are going to buy us the most traction as far as, you know, purchase engines to keep money in town, purchase a building package to keep the money in town, that kind of stuff, then we could have a common sense conversation about this. But we need a lot more information than we got right now. Thank you. I'd like to have a work session.
And one more quick comment from Baylor.
Councilman Baylor.
And this is for staff, they can look at it later, don't need to discuss it, but on page 54, there's a rebate of tax on sales of home heating oil. We don't charge tax on home heating oil, so I'm not sure that needs to be in this code, but maybe there's a reason for it. They can look at it at another time. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, council. We've struck item 19 from the agenda on the COVID-19 emergency response. Forever, at least until you put it back on. So we have pending agenda, capital improvement project lists, calendar, elected and appointed officials lists. Helen.
I want to speak to the CIP list. We are putting together a updated list of projects that we'll have in front of you for the meeting on the 16th. We are putting in project proposals to the feds and the state grant opportunities that are arising. So we want to make sure that you guys are in concurrence on how you want to proceed and which projects you want to focus on. So we'll have that for you at the next meeting.
Okay. Anything else, council? Okay, audience participation. Not seeing any.
Did we skip the agenda or did I miss it?
We were on pending agenda. Did you have something?
Oh, yeah, I just think that, let me trying to find that page here. I flipped my packet over.
62.
Yeah, most of those upcoming meetings, agenda items and or events with specific dates, the section C down, or wait, no, it's section B. those things that have been referred,
Yeah,
I think most of those can go away, quite
tell
frankly.
me. I'd love to go away with them, just as long as,
Placing a ballot prop to change the council seats, so that we decided we weren't gonna do that. The picnic basket mobile restaurant thing, she's, doesn't even live in town anymore.
I guess I don't have good direction on when I can just take things off, so I'm always waiting.
I'm just
for
telling you
guys.
now, I think we can take off 2, 3, 4.
What did we do with the undesignated seats? We had a
think
talk
we-
about that.
I think we pushed it till after the
Oh, yeah.
states, just to see how it shook down with the state doing it this time around and seeing what the implications were before changing ours up.
Right. Number 2 was only,
A ways from now. We could just bring it back up again.
Anyway, I'd say get rid of 2, 3, 4, and 8 for sure right now, and probably some others. With somebody else.
Is there any objection
be
to
here.
removing those councils?
well, number 2 only got put on in November.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yeah, Councilman Meyer.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Number 2, I would like to keep that on just so that we do look at it again after the state election. I know that's way away, but good reminder.
Can we note that on there, that after the state election or whatever, or state?
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it says after the 22 state
Okay.
election.
But is everybody okay with 3? And what about 4?
So 3 is the mobile restaurant picnic basket referred for more detailed information.
I'm okay with 3.
Any objection to that one?
That applicant isn't even here.
No,
Okay.
I'm not hearing any. So we can strike that. Item 4 is ordinance 1196. It's amending the budget to take $100,000 from the permanent fund for the impound lot. It was referred to the second reading till there's a first quarter financial update.
I think if we're gonna see that, myself, if we're gonna see that, if we're gonna see a capital budget come before us, and that's a thing that staff wants in that capital budget, they'll put it there, but I think the resolution is a dead issue.
Okay, so any objection, council? Okay, we'll go ahead and strike 4 then. And then 8 is approving a contract for a federal lobbyist.
That was a while ago.
Yeah.
That was a long time back, 2 or 3 years, I think, or a year and a half maybe. So any objection to striking that one, council? Okay, we'll strike 8, and the list has been shortened.
Sounds good.
Okay, we didn't have any audience participation. I'll offer one more time. Okay, seeing none, council comments. I'll start online. And I don't know what you're talking on, Councilman Guard, but you are coming through loud and clear. That's as crisp and clear as I've heard a remote caller, actually. So we'll start with you and your comments.
Oh, does that mean that I should speak more quietly because I'm blowing out everybody's ears?
No, you actually just got a little bit quieter there. You were louder.
Okay. Anyway, I'd like to thank staff for everything they've put into tonight's meeting. I do think we need more information and more conversation before we can do anything meaningful with any kind of stuff on the sales tax cap. I'd also like to see us look at doing some kind of community outreach or a community meeting, but I think it would behoove us to start early, to start talking about how we want to start dealing with possible deficits in future budgets here when we are missing the $1 million or $1.25 million of COVID money and other free money that has been coming down the pike here for a little bit. Look at what it really costs us to supply the services we've got in town at a meaningful level, instead of short funding ourselves and then end up with deferred maintenance and all the other things that go along with it, and figure out what we want to be running for services in a budget here in town, rather than getting it shoved down our throat in a couple of years and we all end up squabbling and arguing about what we want to do on short notice. So I'd like to see some of that. Other than that, that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Okay, Councilman Meyer.
Yeah, thanks to staff for all the information for this meeting. Thanks to the city center for the written report. It was nice to see what we had collected for the raw fish tax, and then also the letters that you sent out to the individuals that about the raw fish tax. So it was nice to see that. It was good to get a report from the South Harbor. Excited about that. And I agree with Councilmember Starr. Getting more information about sales tax. I really am interested in where all the exemptions are and where the cap and where the leakage actually is, and rather than just where we think it could be. We could be focusing on one particular area where it's not. So it's not going to really benefit us too much to go down that route. So we just like to get more information on it, more information on our sales tax exemptions in general. I think better to tighten up the holes on what our code is and what we should be collecting on, rather than raising new taxes or taxing other things at higher rates. So I look forward to continuing the discussion around our tax collection. Again, thanks everybody for all the work that's put in.
Hey, Councilman Baylor.
I think Councilman Starr's comments were spot on, and I would say that's what we need to do.
Okay. Councilman Schaefer.
Yeah, I agree with all of the comments before me, and thank you to staff for all the work you put in, and also thank you to the city manager. I really appreciated the report this week. I had a bunch of questions written down, and then as I read through your report, it kept taking off my questions, so I really appreciated that.
Councilman Gleason.
Thanks to staff and the letters that Helen wrote to the individuals that were disputing the raw fish tax. Those were well constructed. Everybody have a good night.
Councilman Allison.
Yeah, I didn't say anything when we took COVID-19 off of the agenda, but there's no reason to have it on two places in the agenda, so that's why I agreed with taking it off of at this point in time. We've shut down the management team already, so there isn't really any real representative of that. I mean, we get Dr. Sanders' report, and that's probably as good as we're going to get at this point in time. So I think if we have any COVID-19 questions, or if the community has any questions, they can certainly do it during that report time earlier in the agenda, or comment on that report. So that's fine. The declaration of disasters, I know there's no money there yet. There's no allocation method yet, but it's likely that at some point in time, Cordova will get some, and I would just like to see council a little more involved in potential projects the next time around. This time we weren't. I know the Harbor Commission got to decide, and we didn't have many options as a council. We were given the option we had, and it was that or nothing basically at the time. So I'd like to see council a little more involved in that. And I look forward to some financial reports next meeting. I hope that it doesn't get pushed off to another meeting again. And should have mentioned it as the pending agenda, and I forgot, but we are past time for one of our employees' evaluation and currently in the window of the other employees' evaluation time. So we need to get on those evaluations soon.
Thank you.
Two of the council members will not be council members any longer in a month. So I hope to stay as mayor, but we'll let the community decide on that. But I certainly won't be a council member, and Councilmember Gleason won't be here either. So I don't think it's fair to do evaluations of employees your first or second meeting as a new council member. And it's not fair to the employee to not get the input of somebody who's been with them for the last year or two or three or however long it's been. So
Yeah. Thanks for the reminder. I did start working on HR with that, and it fell down the stack a little bit, but we'll get those circulated out to council, the evaluations, so the sitting council can do those. Executive session item?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, have a motion.
second.
Is there any opposed? Hearing none, we're adjourned. God dang it. It's gonna get a